It was in northern Iraq that Zelikow would find a strategy for victory that he could support.
The situation when we got into Tal Afar was very bleak. The enemy had essentially established control over the city. This was sort of a franchise operation of Al-Qaeda in Iraq.
Colonel H.R. McMaster's approach was to systematically clear sections of the city. Then, U.S. troops stayed and secured the population and focused on rebuilding. It was known as clear, hold, and build.
It meant having outposts across the city, so that your good intentions were backed up by actions. The people who allied themselves with you were not then killed when they went home, because you had troops out there watching for insurgents and protecting people.
What is amazing is once you are able to lift the pall of fear off of these populations, how life just flows back into these cities. But what's important is to keep security there, because we're battling a very ruthless, a murderous enemy who's determined to come back into these areas.
The lesson of Tal Afar was that you had to be in the city among the population, living there in small units.
McMaster's clear, hold, and build approach was a significant departure from U.S. military strategy.
It was suggestive of what was possible with a lot of investment of effort and manpower in a relatively small area.
He goes up to Tal Afar, he sits down with Colonel H.R. McMaster, and he actually picks up that phrase, clear, hold, and build, and says, oh, actually, there is a strategy that's working out here. It's just not anything that anybody in the Pentagon seems to be aware of.
What's remarkable about Tal Afar is, why isn't that being done in different forms all over the country?
They've retaken this city from terrorist members of Al-Qaeda in
U.S. operation.
Zelikow advised Rice clear, hold could be a strategy for victory.
My argument was that we needed to make another major push on Iraq with a much stronger and more articulated strategy to succeed and resource what it would take to succeed.
Rice decided to champion clear, hold, build before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. The Secretary of State proposing military policy was a direct and very public challenge to Defense Secretary Rumsfeld.
Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice.
Our political military strategy has to be to clear, hold, and build, to clear areas from insurgent control, to hold them securely, and to build durable national Iraqi institutions.
Rumsfeld was not happy.
I heard later that the Secretary of Defense was upset, and I heard actually that General Casey was upset. That here we were trying to articulate strategy, that was their job.
There have been some critics who have said that you don't have enough troops to do this clear, hold, and build strategy.
Oh, please, let me just stop right there. Anyone who takes those three words and thinks it means the United States should clear, and the United States should hold, and the United States should build, doesn't understand the situation. It is the Iraqis' country. They've got 28 million people there. They are clearing, they are holding, they are building. They're to be the ones doing the reconstruction in that country. And we do not have, with 160,000 troops there, the idea that we could do that is so far from reality. Nor was there any intention that we should do that.
And so a great deal has changed. The only unfortunate thing is that it took so long to change. It was not until February of 2007 the strategy of clear, hold, and build was adopted. It was not until February of 2007 that, let's be honest, the incredibly ineffectual General George Casey was replaced and the Secretary of Defense was replaced. Donald Rumsfeld was forced to resign. In his place, Robert Gates, who is still Secretary of Defense in the new Obama administration. In place of George Casey was David Petraeus, the man in charge of the surge, and the man responsible for turning Iraq around. We are certainly not out of the woods yet. The situation there, now 2.5 years after the surge began is much, much better than it was at any time between 2003 and February of 2007. The price we have paid has been enormous. As of this lecture, as of July 2009, 4,316 Americans have died. So we can see from this graph the casualty numbers peaking in the early months of 2007 have significantly declined. The black line there marks essentially the beginning of the change in strategy now, where the surge is working. But this is only one side of the story, those killed in action. Because the number of wounded soldiers is astronomical. In the Vietnam War, 53,000 Americans died, 158,000 were wounded. It means for every death there were 3 soldiers wounded. In this war, that ratio is much, much higher. Battlefield medicine has saved many, many lives that otherwise would have lost. Now that said, it also means that soldiers are surviving catastrophic injuries, catastrophic brain injuries, the loss of multiple limbs because of improvised explosive devices by the side of the road. Though many, many more soldiers are surviving, their quality of life upon coming home nowhere near what it was when they left. Moreover, one thing that's not included in this graph are the number of psychological injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, shell shock, as it was once known. Hundreds of thousands of young men have come back mentally scarred, and unfortunately many of those have not received the proper mental health treatment that they earned and deserve. From a financial perspective, the cost of this war is astronomical. As of July 2009, the approximate cost to date is $1 trillion. $1,000 billion. Which, and after all, the massive stimulus bill was $767 billion. This is fully 33% more than the stimulus cost. $1 trillion. And of course, the war's not over. We still have 135,000 combat troops in Iraq. The war is not over. Unfortunately, our fiscal situation is perilous. This graph here charts our national debt, which is the amount of money we spend above and beyond what we take in through taxes. Throughout much of U.S. history, the debt has been nominal. However, beginning with World War II, we began to ring up bills that we were not paying off. So we can see here, the overwhelming majority of our debt, however, has been incurred since the beginning of the Ronald Reagan administration in 1980. When Reagan took office, we had approximately $1.5 trillion in debt, in today's money. Today, that number has surpassed $12 trillion in debt. We've seen the sharpest increase in our debt during the 8 years of President George W. Bush's presidency. This is a problem. We have written many, many, many checks that we simply cannot ever cash. I don't know what the answer here is, kids. It's grim. It's very, very grim.